Hey everybody, Raymond again with another video. Today we're going to make a replacement for those pesky Miss Pac Man ribbon cables. These things get brittle after a while. People pull them out of the sockets by the cable, they damage them. They're a real pain in the neck. So I've got a spool of cable. We need some good scissors to cut it with. And then we have a couple of little IDP connectors, the 40 pin plugs that will plug into those. And it's just as simple as cutting the cable and crimping things on, just like we did with the other cable. So the first thing to do is just to come in here and make sure we have a cable that's about the same size. And the beauty of this cable is you can cut it with a pair of scissors real easy. Just like that. But there's a trick to crimping these. So let me show you that after we peel off 10 wires from this 50 pin ribbon cable and we make it a 40 pin. The trick is how do I get these things to crimp without damaging the pins on the connector? These pins will bend in the vise. So again, we're going to use the trusty 4-inch bench vise with the padded jaws to crimp the cable, but we're also going to use a cheap throwaway 40 pin single wipe socket. Not like this particular one because it's got holes in the bottom where the pins can stick out a little bit if they're a little too long. So we're going to come in here and we're going to put this socket on the connector. And you have to be careful when you do this to not close the shell of the connector, because you got to be able to crimp it still. So we've got the socket mounted to it. Now let's open that back up. There we go. Now we can get the ribbon cable on here. And it doesn't really matter which way you get it on here, because really it's not important as long as you get it lined up in the socket correctly. So the trick is to just wiggle and slide and wiggle and slide until you can get this connector through here. Or you could just take the connector apart and slide the cable on it and snap the top back on slightly once you're done. Really, it just depends on the connector as to which way you want to go. I like to try to feed it through like this, so that's just one less thing to worry about, but it doesn't always want to cooperate. There we go. Now we got it. And these are a little easier to line up to make square because they're great big fat wide connectors. Now with this, I'm going to put it in here a little bit and just crimp it just a little bit to get it started so that it doesn't fall apart when we put it in. And then I'm going to put it in and I'm just going to crimp it home. And you got to be really careful with these to make sure you don't overdo it, because if you overdo it, you're going to end up with bent pins. So everything looks good here. So use one of our trusty little small flat regular screwdrivers and take the socket off. And there we go. One straight connector with no pins damaged. They're all nice and straight. And we can do the other side. Now there's a trick to doing these. When you want to get the second side, you really need to pay attention that you're putting this connector on the proper way, because you don't want to end up with one connector facing up and the other connector facing down. So take your time when you're doing these and do it right. Okay, we got the other side poking through. Nice and square. We can slide the socket on now if we want. Whether you do it before or do it after, it's really up to you. Sometimes it's easier to do it after, sometimes it's easier to do it before. It just depends on the connector you're working with and how easy it is to get it on without damaging the pins. And again, you got to be really careful when you put these in and you tighten it all the way down. Make sure the connector's seated. The little latches down here have locked in place. Take this apart. There we go. And voila. One replacement Pac ribbon cable for putting on the Miss Pac Man daughter card. Thanks, and I hope you enjoyed the video.